I heard crying in the woods. Are you lost? You don't have to protect him, Hannah.
He already has more than enough.
What?
Protection. No! Somehow he always finds me.
Welcome to Make Your Shit, a creative empowerment podcast. I'm your host, Kyle F. Andrews. My guest today is Stephanie Olmanni. Stephanie is a songwriter and featured vocalist from films like Dune 1 and 2, The Creator, Army of Thieves, and The Boss Baby, and the creative force behind Aeryth, a video game music project. A Berklee-trained multi-instrumentalist and composer, Stephanie honed her professional skills while working in primetime television music. Combining her passion for gaming with her expertise in crafting audiovisual experiences, Olmanni delivers high-fidelity music that features both evocative covers and original compositions inspired by her favorite games. Over the past decade, Stephanie has created hundreds of tracks for production music libraries as well as documentaries. She lives and works in Los Angeles with her husband and frequent music collaborator, Steve Mazzaro, and their agonizingly adorable cat, Kupo. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's dive right into this incredibly exciting project that you do. Called Aeryth. What is Aeryth, and tell me, how did this project come about?
Yeah, so Aeryth is sort of my way to find joy in music after working in it for over a decade. It's really like a passion project. I love video games so much, and I'm so inspired by them. I think that they are the most emotional medium for storytelling, just for the sheer amount of hours that you spend in a game and get to know the characters and the lore. And so I just wanted to find a way to channel my passion for music into that.
Yeah, I regularly spend about 400 hours per game in the world, and the music is probably the most important thing. So as a video game aficionado, when did you realize that video game music was something you wanted to do and that you could do?
Video game music has been a huge part of my life since I was a child. Actually, as a kid, I wasn't allowed to own a video game console.
What?
My parents thought it would, quote, rot my brain. Back in the 90s when Napster was a thing, I discovered music for the Final Fantasy games. So composer Nobuo Uematsu. And I thought it was just the most beautiful music I had ever heard. And this was before the days of iTunes. You couldn't just download stuff. So I'd beg my parents to drive me to New York City to get these imported CDs from Japan. And I just would listen to it on repeat over and over again.
How much time passed between you starting to get into music like that and actually owning your first video game system?
So my first video game system is actually because of Tinder.
Well, that's a story right there. We're going to spend the whole podcast on that one.
So I swiped right on this dude, Steve, 8 years ago, who is now my husband. And actually, one of the first conversations that we had on Tinder was about Nobuo Uematsu, the composer for Final Fantasy. He asked me, how did you get into film scoring? And I told him about Berklee and gave some generic answer. And he was like, I'm a little bit nerdier. I love the games Final Fantasy. And I was like, oh yeah, Nobuo Uematsu. I used to play that sheet music when I was a kid. And he wanted apparently to ask, will you marry me at that moment? But we hadn't met yet, so it might have been a little weird. But
yeah, a little soon on that one, Steve, but heart in the right place for sure.
Exactly. Our first Christmas, I really wanted to impress him, so I bought him a VR headset, and he bought me a PlayStation 4, which was my first big girl console. And I first started with some easier games like Life is Strange, and then dove straight into the deep end of every From Software title. So Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Bloodborne. And I just really wanted him to think I was cool. So that's how my gaming career started. But the Aeryth Project basically came about because during the pandemic, I was really inspired by this song that plays in the video game Ghost of Tsushima. Basically, you spend, without giving any spoilers away, you spend like over 100 hours with a specific character, and then something very tragic happens, and this very beautiful music plays over it. And it absolutely emotionally wrecked me. Like, I was just crying so much. I had never been that affected by a film or anything. Like, it just was so powerful. I just decided to do a cover of that song, and the internet seemed to really like it. So that sort of naturally progressed to doing more things like that.
I saw the genre is called, it's very interesting to me. I love the title, cinematic pop.
Yes.
I'm enamored by that. Can you tell me more about, so that I can go find more to listen to? What is cinematic pop exactly?
So cinematic pop, some of my favorite artists are bands like Tui or Mako. A lot of the music I listen to are actually from games I don't even play. League of Legends, Valorant. I don't play those games, but I love the music. It's like a mix of like this heavy pop, but also sort of that film score cinematic sound. So that's kind of how especially for my original music, I tried to incorporate that style to make it very dramatic and feel like, basically, I want anyone who listens to my music to feel like they're a video game character. So,
having listened to your music, I very much feel that way, for sure. And it's so interesting. I listened to the World of Warcraft soundtrack by David Arkenstone, and I have never played a single moment of that game.
Yes.
But it's such great music. So when it comes to video game music and making a more cinematic approach to it, is there a way that you break down the work that already exists to make it your own?
Absolutely. Yeah. So a lot of people just do covers of video game songs. A lot of times they'll dress up in cosplay. There's so many wonderful covers out there. But I try to do something a little different where I rearrange them in a new style. For example, there is this track from Final Fantasy XIV called Civilizations. It actually became a very viral, popular meme because the composer performed the song live while playing an automaton, I think is the name of the instrument. And basically the chorus of this song is like, la hee la. Like, it's very like quirky and silly. And it plays through this area called the Ratika Greatwood. And so Masayoshi Soken, the composer, did this thing on a stage where he was just belting this female vocal part, and that video went viral on TikTok, and I saw this and I was like, this is hilarious, and I started playing the game because of it. I was like, what if I made a meme of a meme? So I remember when I was recording it, I thought Lahi was like, the developers had created this very authentic and important language for the people of Eorzea. Turns out it was just like a sample from like a sample library. It was just gibberish, but I made sure to like pronounce it very well. And I made like a trailerized version of the song. I was like, what if Lahi was this very serious trailer music? And then I taught myself how to use Premiere Pro just to edit the video together, and the internet went crazy for it. Like, they loved it. It was fun to sort of take this very quirky, silly piece that's in this video game and make it like a very serious, like Hollywood trailerized track.
And how important is emotion in the process there? Like, do you know what emotions you want to draw out of someone? Is it coming from what you're experiencing? How do you play emotions into the creative work?
Yes. I think a lot of times, so I personally love to listen to game music or cinematic pop when I'm like exercising, like it pumps me up, it inspires me. A lot of times I'll approach it as like, I really just want this music to make someone feel like a badass. Like, that's usually the emotion that I'm trying to convey. Or I'll have some tracks that are just plain silly, like the Lahi cover. And there is this other one called Papaya, which is another Final Fantasy XIV track. It plays during their Easter event, and it's just very silly. It's like papaya, da 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 da. Like, it's very silly. And I was like, what if like we made this really dark and scary, and you're able to take your character in the game and make it emote and do all these actions. So I basically, like, as a film, like kind of like a little filmmaker, I made this whole music video of my character being stalked by like my friend who was dressed in a bunny suit. So it was very Donnie Darko-esque, and then just made this really dark, scary sounding version of Papaya. And the community was like, what just happened? Like, what are you doing?
Always nice to blow the mind of a community that is already familiar with the work. So that's great. So it sounds like there's also a lot of the movies that you like in what you do. How do the movies themselves, not necessarily the ones that you make the music for, but just the movies that you love in general, how do they make their way into the work that you do?
Yeah.
How do you build that cinematic approach to it?
I worked for about 6 years on Grey's Anatomy, and one of the big things with that show is everything is very Mickey Mouse. So every cut in the music is very pronounced and visually. People may not notice it, but it makes it very like succinct and like there's for the comedy or the drama or whatever. So I got really, really good over those 6 years of like looking at a scene and being able to down to the frame see exactly like which cut I wanted to make impactful. So I really do feel like my experience in film scoring contributes a lot to the ability of making music videos where it hits a cut and it's like very dramatic. It's actually sort of what I'm doing with the videos is the opposite of film scoring. It's like film scoring backwards. Yeah, I don't know. Like for Papaya specifically, I had just gotten over getting all 4 of my wisdom teeth out.
Ooh,
so I was
like, oh gosh, at the same time?
Yeah.
No,
so
thank
I was
you.
a little high. And I watched Poor Things. I was like, what if I approached this, like even the titles at the beginning of the Papaya music video was copying sort of the titles that Poor Things had. And I'm like, what if like, because Final Fantasy XIV is it can be a very cute, like quirky game. And it's like, what if I made this really dark and serious? And I think comedy is like just a great way to like, I don't know, entertain the community and connect with them, and they loved it, so it was fun.
For sure. Well, let's keep it on film scoring a little bit because I'm so intrigued. As a filmmaker, that's the part for me that's the most magical because it sort of takes what we have set out to tell as a story and it makes it a little bit more immersive and impactful. So the experience on Grey's, did you find that the responsibility to dictate the scene was left to the music, and how did you cope with having to tell a story but not being able to use the words to tell it?
Yeah, well, for a show like Grey's, even before I started working on it, it had been on air for, I think, like 5 or 6 years at that point. And so what happens every week is actually the picture editors will put a temp score in from previous music in Grey's Anatomy, and that'll sort of guide them for what emotions they want for the new original score. So to be honest, for that show specifically, there was a very clear guide of like where they wanted it to go, but then you sort of make it your own. Sometimes with films, you'll get a temp score and they'll say, I like this mood or this style, and then you just sort of make it, the goal is always to make it better than the temp score. But for Grey's Anatomy specifically, it was just like a machine that ran every week. It's like we sort of would formulaically take what the editors had already put to the picture and just make it new and fresh.
And are there motifs and other parts of the music that you have to keep in as the weeks go by?
Yeah, there's usually like a theme for different characters that happens both in television and film.
So you can't just whole hog change the music from week to week.
Exactly.
It's gonna be country this week, guys. Okay, Shonda, we're putting country on. Well, from TV to film, what's the changeover in the experience of making the music?
Yeah, so I will say I enjoy film a lot more than television. Television is great. It's definitely more of like a sort of stable, like you kind of know what to expect every week. Whereas film, it's like every couple of months, it's a new exciting project. For example, the creator, I wrote 3 songs for that film, directed by Aeryth Edwards, and it was around the time that ChatGPT came out, so AI was just like the big topic of conversation. And I was so like excited about this new technology. This is before I realized it was all evil and was going to take all our jobs.
Yeah, we're slowly realizing that.
Yeah. But the first time I watched the cut, I just was like, this is such a cool film. Like, this is just, I don't know. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Steve and I actually went to Japan during the production of that film. And because a lot of that film takes place in New Asia, this made up futuristic place. And I remember being in Japan and just thinking about the film. And I don't know, it just, I feel like with films, I can really immerse myself in that world for as long as the production is going on.
So as you're immersed in that, what's your collaboration like with the director? Are they hands-on? Are they in studio with you every day? Or do they just like Zoom call every 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, they're, for that, Gareth was very hands-on. It was cool because I remember being so inspired by my recent trip to Japan because the aesthetic there reminded me so much of the film that one of the songs I actually wrote in Japanese and used this Vocaloid called Hatsune Miku. She's a soft synth. And this character that's been around for like 10 years. I actually saw her perform at Coachella this year. It was pretty crazy. The first like digital performer. I used this synthesizer as the voice, and I took 1 semester of Japanese, so I also need a translator to help me, but I programmed like every word in order to make it like authentic for this scene that was like taking place like in New Asia. So
do you find the digital facsimile experience to be like, is that where music is headed now? Are we going to have...
Oh, you mean like with, yeah. So Hatsune Miku is a little different from like AI vocals and things that are coming out.
Because it's still created by a person, wholesale.
Yes, it's still created by a person. She's literally just an instrument
like an avatar,
that you have to like go in there and program word by word and program each note. She's, no different than a Moog synthesizer or something like that. The new AI like vocals that are coming out are just stealing from prior recordings, and so yeah, it's a very different thing and a much more evil, insidious thing because it's gonna take all our jobs.
Well, I'll tell you, as a big, I'm a synthwave fan, huge synthwave and retrowave fan. So I love what music is capable of today, as slight digital, slight acoustic, a really authentic sound.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of that from your music. It's a real authentic beat to it. When it comes to working that into the films that you work on, how much of your personal approach to the work is part of the music versus how much is just like whatever you need?
Yeah, it's a balance of both. I've been lucky because I've been focusing more on songs lately for films, and I've been a songwriter since I was in high school. So I really enjoy like, especially the song in The Creator, it was such a dream come true to make like a J-pop style song because I loved anime as a kid. And so even though I have to serve the scene and serve the picture, it was fun to really let loose and like just have so much fun with it and do something because that can be rare in film scoring. A lot of times, your number one priority is serving the picture. So to get a chance to do something that you personally love and would listen to, just for fun is rare. And it was so much fun.
I love the words you use to talk about all of this work that you do. Joy, fun, it really seems like a positive experience. As creatives, there are, of course, times when the positivity is kind of there to help you through the harder moments. What do you do when you hit a creative block with your work? How do you push through that, or do you just stop and take a break?
I hit those blocks a lot with the Aeryth Project specifically, mostly because it is a passion project. It's hard sometimes to do something that, may not have the same financial return as your normal job and to still believe in it. There's 60,000 tracks that are uploaded to Spotify a day. Wow. So so in order to like compete with that and YouTube and everything, there's definitely moments of like, what's the point of this? And then in 10 years, AI is just going to take over. Like, what's the point of still doing this? And the best advice I can give is just remembering, if you enjoy the process, which I do, it doesn't matter what the result is, because at the end of the day, I'm still improving my craft. So when I get those blocks, or I feel like, what's the point of doing all this? I just say to myself, like, do you still enjoy this? Do you still enjoy playing games and making music videos and creating music? And it's like, if the answer is yes, then continue to do it. And that's where finding the joy, I think, is.
I love that. And I think that's really important for people to hear, especially now when it does feel like the digital era has democratized art, but it's at the same time made everybody, given them access. So finding your way through to break through is important. When it comes to kind of starting out, is there obviously, learning how to do music is an important part of making music, but are there any other skills you think are important to the music production process?
Now, I went to Berklee College of Music, but nowadays there's so much information on YouTube. There's so many tutorials. For example, like I had never touched Premiere Pro before, which is an picture editing software, and I just sort of learned how to use it through YouTube. So, there's tutorials on mixing online. There's tutorials on pretty much anything. You can get a full, don't tell my college, you can get a full like Berklee education, just through YouTube. I mean, my husband, Steve, didn't go to college and just, did the thing and just kept working on making the shit.
As a fellow Bostonian art school kid, I think you're one of 3 people I've met from Berklee who actually graduated from Berklee and didn't just leave and say, wait, I can do this on my own. So nothing against Berklee, clearly. But of course, I do want to ask you about what is probably the biggest project you worked on, which is Dune 1 and 2.
Yes.
I guess those would be 2 projects there, but oh my gosh. What was the experience on like working on a massive blockbuster like those films that are also adaptations?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of happened by accident, to be honest. It was deep in the pandemic, and my husband has worked with Hans Zimmer for over a decade now, and basically, we were all in lockdown, so Steve's assistant couldn't be in the studio with him. Steve was working from home, and I just to sort of help him out, I was like, if you need any help, like, take some of this work off your plate.
If you need me, what's that? You're working on Dune? Did you say Dune? Yeah, I could work on that a little bit. Easy as that, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. But so I was just doing some tech stuff for him and like just helping out in that way. And then there was this one cue that he needed female vocals for, and he's like, why don't you sing this? It was just a demo. Like, I really didn't think it was going to get into the movie. And Denis, the director, apparently cried the first time he heard the cue. So he was like, do not change anything about this. And
your husband came home, gave you a big hug, said, what do you need, hon?
And then, and that's how I became like the voice of the sandworm. That's my claim to fame now. And then we actually re-recorded that for Dune 2, and Denis loved the one from the first movie so much he actually licensed just to use that same track. So financially,
that's a huge compliment too.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, that's great. Less work for me, and yeah.
That's fantastic. I mean, the score from those movies is absolutely brilliant. So knowing that you and Steve worked on that, it's pretty special. Anything from since doing Dune that you are now trying to get into your music? Any approach that you've taken since you've done one of the biggest blockbusters in history? Now, what's next coming after that?
There's a couple of films that we're working on. Sort of can't talk about yet, but
that's okay. Nobody's listening, so like you can say whatever you want. It won't get out of this room.
But definitely also like for Dune 2, Hans and really instructed me to like think outside the box, which was an interesting approach. Like we'd made percussion loops out of me doing these breaths, like this like like kind of things. And I did it actually so much that I started to hyperventilate and like pass out in my vocal booth, which was really not fun. But it was funny because then we heard some trailers recently that like I think borrowed the Dune like breath loops that we made. And I was like, see, it's cool. You know, Hans definitely likes to really think outside the box. So I would say whenever I approach a new project or film or Aeryth thing, it's like, okay, what like weird thing can we do? Like, should we play, you know, the piano with forks or like, I don't know, like what weird out of the box sort of approach can we take? I think Dune definitely inspired that.
That's incredible. I love that. And I love that that's the advice that Hans is giving you, that you should think outside the box because you're also thinking for yourself a little bit in that sense.
Yeah, it's much more creative. Exactly.
That's fantastic. So overall, when it comes to the creative work of doing this, do you have a preference for movies, video game, or are you just like ready to roll with whatever?
I mean, it would be my dream to do more video game things. I think just because, you know, like, don't tell anyone. But Steve and I don't actually watch a lot of movies or TV shows. Every night we mostly game. So, you know, we feel comfortable in that world. And I think, you know, after being in this industry for so many years and like, it's like, yeah, Dune, whatever. Like, you know, these, yeah, Zack Snyder, yeah, Christopher Nolan, cool. Oh my gosh, Baldur's Gate 3. Like, you know, that makes us excited. And I think when you're trying to find your place in this industry, follow the things that make you excited, because otherwise, like, I'm just trying to be like this pretentious, like, oh yes, you know, I'm a filmmaker, I'm so smart, and then I'm just like faking it. So
I mean, it's impossible to be pretentious when you've got Baldur's Gate telling you to go down by the river.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Oh, well, that's so. I love hearing about this, especially because it's not just the work that you're doing isn't solely relegated to one part of one industry. It's like it can go across the industry, and you can be creative in several different industries that are starting to like hit each other a little bit. So aside from the few movies that you have coming up, where do you see the music that you're doing going from here?
Yeah, well, I'm currently working on my second original album for Aeryth under Aeryth's name, and I honestly, after this year, after you know, seeing Hatsune Miku perform at Coachella, and I also got to perform live with my very dear friend Tina Guo. I've discovered that, like, originally Aeryth, because she's always represented as my little avatar in video games with pink hair and this, like, very perfect-looking digital avatar. And I realized, especially now over the last couple of years with AI, that there's something so irreplaceable about human-to-human connection, like at a concert. So I see, like, the dream would be to, like, do more live shows or do something more live as opposed to just having YouTube be my audience or Spotify. So I don't know. I'd love to like take her out of the studio and do some live things.
Well, that sounds like exciting uncharted waters a little bit. So I hope that happens for you. That would be great. When you're thinking about making video games or making music based on the video games that you enjoy, what in the video games is something that you're drawn to when you make that choice?
That's a really good question. Because you know, especially with social media, there's this pressure of like, okay, you know, like, oh, the Elden Ring DLC just dropped. And don't get me wrong, I love Elden Ring. But like, you know, should I do something for that because the community is really excited about it or whatever? I actually have realized, like, when Final Fantasy VII Rebirth came out, I did a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth cover thinking, like, oh, this is topical. This is something that people are excited about right now. Maybe it'll do well. But honestly, like, my most recent cover was from this mobile otome game called Love in Deep Space. And I just am so addicted to the game, and I love the game and the character so much that I just was so inspired to, like, I don't know, like, when I get really inspired by a game, I want to just stay in that world as long as possible. So I just did a cover, and I'm like, no one's going to listen to this. This is whatever. This will just be for me. Like, I just want to do this. And then the community loved it. So again, it's that thing of like authenticity. It's like, you know, whether it be the characters or the world building or whatever it is that resonates with me, clearly resonates with these other fans, and then I'm going to be more authentic in my expression of that music or that game or that video. And then that seems to be, a more successful approach.
I do have to ask you about another film that you did. You also did a wonderful cult classic called The Boss Baby.
Yes.
What's it like scoring an animated movie? Is it any different? Is the context of the film different than you would normally do?
It's a lot of fun. You can really be quirky and silly with these. My favorite sort of vocalizations that I did for Boss Baby 2 was I basically recorded this there's a pageant scene, and so I got to record these kids singing, but it was me singing, but I just format shifted my voice up to sound like little kids, and then just recorded 30 takes in all these really silly sounding voices, "Roar" or whatever, and then just put it all together into this choir of deranged children, and it was just so much fun and so silly, and the director loved it. So.
Amazing. Probably the best paycheck you've ever gotten too.
Yes, definitely.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for coming in, Stephanie. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
What's the best way for listeners to follow you, listen to your music?
You can search Aeryth on Spotify or YouTube. That's spelled Aeryth.
All right. So do you have time to sit around and answer some very stupid fucking questions?
Yes.
Great. So we will be right back with Stephanie Olmanni answering stupid fucking questions for smart fucking people.
As a filmmaker, I'm fascinated by the endless ways to tell a story in pictures, and I find my inspiration in films by great directors. Whether you're just a casual film fan or a full-fledged filmmaker yourself, the Director Series podcast will deepen your love of cinema with in-depth breakdowns of your favorite films and directors. Each month brings together a collection of films from an influential filmmaker or film movement, and explores the overlapping themes and ideas that tie them together in a bid to inspire the next generation of storytellers. Look for the Director Series podcast on your favorite podcatcher, or go to patreon.com/podfrontier to learn more.
You think you know about Hollywood's golden age of movie making, but what about the ghosts lurking just off screen? I'm Bianca Lopez, and I'd like to tell you a ghost story. With our new podcast, Tinseltown Ghost Stories, you'll be learning about the people who built Los Angeles, the scandals that rocked the industry, and the broken dreams that still echo on the boulevard. Hollywood is more comfortable when its secrets stay hidden in the shadows. On Tinseltown Ghost Stories, we listen to what the dead have to say, because the darkness is so much less scary when you shine a little light on it.
And welcome back. We've got Stephanie Olmanni still here and just about to undergo some stupid fucking questions for smart fucking people. You ready, Stephanie?
I'm ready.
All right. Which Muppet character do you most identify with?
I feel like Kermit the Frog, because he's very timid, and I'm very timid right now. So,
but he's a timid leader. No one ever says Kermit. Yes. So thank you for saying Kermit. That's
Kermit.
Love that answer. What is your favorite song from high school that you still listen to?
My favorite song from high school has to be the theme song to this very obscure anime called Serial Experiments Lane. And the song is called Duvet. And it had a resurgence in recent years on TikTok. And it became this viral song. And I was like, dude, that's my childhood. And I just love TikTok for those reasons.
That's so much better than Closing Time or Gwen Stefani. That is maybe the best answer I've received to that. So thank you. You are in an apocalypse. Would you rather fight zombies or robots?
Robots.
Any particular reason?
Robots, because I have texture issues, neurodivergent texture issues, and zombies are really gross.
If you could be any video game character in the history of video games inside a Super Smash Brothers game, which character would it be?
Princess Peach.
Princess Peach.
Princess Peach. I'm a pink girly. Aerith's pink hair. Yeah, definitely princess, girly things. My studio's pink. I know that's a lame answer, but
it's a great answer. Are you looking forward to the new Zelda game coming out on Switch?
Yes.
Very excited about that. Is there a video game that hasn't been made into a movie that you would like to see made into a movie?
Nier Automata.
That's a popular one I've never played before.
Yeah.
Is something about that story that you really dig?
The story is really trippy. I don't know how they do it in movie form. They have an anime of it, but it's more of it breaks the fourth wall sort of video game. But I just would love to see 2B as a real character because she's just so beautiful.
So you have a cat, Kupo.
Yes.
What would Kupo say about you if we asked what it was like living with you?
Kupo is a very emotionally codependent cat. Like every time so my husband's studio's upstairs, my studio's downstairs, and like she just throughout the day will wander between the studios just meowing and bothering us as we're trying to or I'll be in my booth and she's like meowing outside. So I think Kupo would say that I am not attentive enough, even though I treat her with more attention than a human child.
Captain Planet-wise, are you earth, fire, wind, water, or heart?
Ooh, fire. Fire. Definitely fire.
Definitely.
Burn.
Yeah, almost. We almost went Beavis and Butthead with that right there. When you go to the movie theater, what is your snack of choice?
I'm a pretty basic bitch. I popcorn and Diet Coke.
Hell yes.
And Diet Coke.
A classic combination right there.
Yeah.
If you had your choice of all genres, what genre of film would you score today and why?
I love sci-fi. I don't know, cyberpunky. Like that's why The Creator was such a dream. I don't know, something that's like mixes electronic with orchestral and futuristic and
as the synthwave aficionado in the room, I am down for that. You tell me where I will pick that album up. Finally, if you were to wake up tomorrow in a city that wasn't Los Angeles, where would it be?
I've never been there, but Portland, I hear.
Portland, Oregon, Maine, Portland,
Oregon.
Maine would be.
Yeah. I hear the
Oregon.
Pacific Northwest is beautiful. I've played a lot of video games in the Pacific Northwest, like Life is Strange, and I just have this dream of trees after living in the desert for the last however many years. So
I hope you get up there. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And it's
Someday.
perfect place for you to go compose for like a month.
Yes.
Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Really loved having you. And really, you gave us a lot of, I think, important information about how to film score and where to keep your heart for that. So thank you for that. My guest was Stephanie Olmanni. You can find her stuff on Spotify under Aeryth if you search, or at aerythmusic.com. Stephanie, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again for listening. I hope you got a little creative inspiration to carry you through your next great challenge. Until next time, I'm your host, Kyle F. Andrews. Make Your Shit is produced by Kyle F. Andrews and Cameron Bile, and co-produced by Emily Castro. Our production supervisor is Morgan Rudder, edited by Zach Morrison. Audio engineering and sound mixing by David Iskandarian at JTB Studios in Atwater Village. Make Your Shit is part of the Pod Frontier Podcast Network, a Film Frontier Studios audio project. For more information, please go to www.filmfrontierstudios.com. I'll be back in 2 weeks for another interview. Until then, get out there and make your shit.